Okay, and we're live. Welcome to another edition of A Book and a Beverage. We have two phenomenal authors who I put together because they write horror, but they actually write so many different things that I'm going to let them tell us about it. But first, Susan, do you have a book and do you have a beverage?
I have hot chocolate.
All right.
With salted caramel in it. Quite good.
Nice.
And the book I was thinking about, book I had turned back into the library, so I don't have it with me. But I just finished, in fact, was David Baldacci's new one called The Edge. It's a sequel to his 620 Man. Very good. Many red herrings everywhere, just like he writes. I'm a big fan of his. I would recommend it to everybody. It's about a lady that gets murdered off on the edge of a cliff, and people who have seen it, but they actually couldn't have seen it because of certain issues they have with their body. And so then he gets shot at while he's investigating, and somebody else gets murdered. And, you know, if you've ever read Baldacci, he does 3 or 4 murders and trying to solve them all together. So I was really entranced by it. So I would recommend it to everybody, if you're a Baldacci fan at least, or if you've never read him, he's very good, very good.
Okay, and I'm sorry, everybody, I'm remiss. I did not say, this is Susan Schwartz, by the way. I did not actually introduce you. I just said Susan. So let me try to do better. Let me try to do better now. Brian Grover, also an author of many, many books in several different genres. Can you tell us about your book and a beverage?
So for my beverage, I'm having some 7-Up Zero.
All right.
0 calories, 0 caffeine, because I've already had too much caffeine today anyway. But for a book, I just finished reading. I don't know if you can see that or not. The Whys and the Wherefores. A fledgling guide, or a guide for the fledgling vampire. I'm sorry, for the fledgling were-thing. I said vampire because the author, John Dimes, wrote a similar book about vampires, but this one is about werewolves. And if you don't know John Dimes, he's the first and I think maybe the only African-American to host a horror movie podcast series on TV. For a long time, it was hosted on TV in Falls Church, Virginia. I actually met him at RavenCon, which is kind of a horror festival, paranormal festival show that happens once a year in Richmond, you know, because we're all living in Edgar Allan Poe country, right? You know, between Baltimore and Richmond.
Right.
If you haven't read him, I highly recommend him, especially if you like Douglas Adams. He has a Douglas Adams kind of humor and mentality to him, but it's his own twist. And in this case, of course, he's exploring the lives of were-things and not so much werewolves, because, I mean, I know that's what I said, but that's kind of the mentality you grow up with. There's vampires, there's werewolves, you know. But there's other things that could be were-things. Perhaps it's a were-rat, or it's a were-cat, or it's a were-whatever. So he just uses were-things. But he's basically getting input from somebody who's telling him the inside secrets of oral traditions handed down from generation to generation, so that the young fledgling were-things can learn how to take their place in, you know, in their society and what they can do. But it's hilarious as well as entertaining from a werewolf perspective if you're not into werewolves. And I mean, he even ties in some, how does Charles Manson tie into were-things? There's interesting things in here that are, I recommend him, this or his vampire book. Go get it. You'll enjoy it. You won't be disappointed.
Okay. Ro, do you want to add anything?
I'm drinking water because I'm sad. And book-wise, yesterday, C.J. Archer's newest in her Cleopatra Fox mystery series just dropped. And I'm getting ready to hit play on that on my drive to work tomorrow. So,
okay. And just to round out, Ro, you'll be surprised. I have
a
Corona.
Wow. You are going to make it through that 12-pack come hell or high water, aren't you?
I have 4 left. I have one every week now. So, you know, next year I'll have something new. And my book is actually tomorrow we're going to be interviewing Chris Grooms. He was next to me at the Hanover Book Festival, and he just launched the 3rd book in the series. This is Tales from Guyand. This one is Legends of Black Hawk. It's the first one. I don't actually have the second or third one yet, but they're coming, and we will be interviewing him tomorrow.
You didn't send me a book. What the hell?
Right. That'll be interesting. And I saw at his table, he had bookmarks that were two different swords, and one was silver and one was black, and he lets the people that buy the book choose which one, and he says 90% of the people take the black sword. So I found that kind of interesting. We're going to go with the dark elf side of things, and leave them white, leave those other guys alone.
So enough about that. Tell me about what you write. That's why we're here. We want to learn about you. So who wants to go first? Susan.
Hey, well, I write mostly paranormal and haunted places, locations I've done throughout Virginia, and I do some medical articles for a website. But for the most part, this one just came out in August. It's called Haunted Inns. Haunted Hotel Inns and Hotels in Virginia. Very excited about this because it was 2 years of making, research, travel, and everything. So I'm very excited about the book. And then my other one that I have is called Haunted Charlottesville and Surrounding Counties. And this came out in 2019. And it basically covers from like Madison County down to Goochland. And then the hotel book is like from Virginia Beach all the way across to Bristol. So a lot of research, a lot of travel, but a lot of good stories, a lot of good tales of different things that have caused hauntings and what has been happening since they discovered it. It's kind of interesting sometimes when you have something happen and then you go back and you research it and go, oh, this is why this is happening. Or you think it is. I mean, nobody really knows, but I had a lot of fun with both of them. So I'm really good with that. I also write short stories. I had 3 trilogy, I guess you'd say. It was called Nightmares and Echoes. A bunch of us authors got together and all the proceeds went to St. Jude's Hospital. Those books are no longer available, but that was my start into writing. And then I did a couple of others with some other authors, just haunted and paranormal things. But these are my 2 so far, and I'm working on 2 fiction novels, so we'll see how it goes.
So when you start working on a book of like haunted hotels of Virginia, you obviously have to like either go stay at these places or talk to people who have stories to tell.
Yes, I a couple. In fact, in that hotel book, probably I stayed at 3. The other ones I had to go and just interview, like like the people at the desk, or if I saw somebody coming out of a room, sometimes I'd say, "Hey, well, anything weird going on in there?" I didn't do that but once or twice because I got really weird looks. But but yeah, I did a lot of research first to find out where they are, and then trying to call and make appointments to go and visit, chat, take pictures. Like I said, both of these books were probably 2 years in the making because of that, but it was a lot of fun. It really was. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process. So, and I'm looking at one more somewhere else, but we'll see how it goes because I don't know if somebody else has grabbed it yet.
So did you have an experience in those places?
Throughout both of them, the hotel book and the Charlottesville book, I had some experiences in a lot of the places, and it was kind of interesting. Got some good pictures. The Charlottesville book, we had about 20 some pictures we wanted to put in it, but we went back and it was me and my brother. He did my pictures for me, and we went back and looked at it and said, well, this could be refraction, or this could be a camera issue, or this is a shadow from a tree. We kept, I think it was about 7 or 8 in there that we actually kept because neither one of us could explain what they were. So I figured that was okay. The hotel book, I didn't get a lot of ghostly type pictures there. I has plenty of pictures of the locations, but I didn't get a whole lot while I was visiting. There is one though, the Martha Washington Inn in Bristol. A friend of mine actually went there and stayed. You may know him. He's called the Haunted MD. He's a doctor at UVA, and he's into the paranormal too. And him and a friend of his went there and stayed, and they took pictures, took a tour. He got lucky. A security guard gave him like the secret tour kind of thing. And I was just happy they trusted me with the information of the pictures. But yeah, I tell people, don't go to these places. And expect to get a picture or an EVP or anything. Just go have fun, see what you get. And, you know, if you can go back another day, try that too. But I found a lot of these places, it's location in number one. And number two, sometimes it's the date. You know, anniversaries, they tend to act up more. And then also the time of the year. Was it summer? Was it winter? You know, so you kind of have to take all that into account when you go and visit these types of places.
So when you're writing something like that, and I'm assuming you've read quite a bit of that kind of stuff. I mean, I know some friend of mine writes kind of things like that too. She loves staying in these kind of places. Can you tell the difference between someone who's written one who actually goes into a place and has a certain kind of perspective on it, and someone who thinks it's all rubbish and just wants to write a book about it?
I've never actually read one of these. I mean, I'm a big fan of L.B. Taylor. I've read all of his books. In fact, I have most of them. Pamela Kinney here, she's done Richmond, Jamestown, Williamsburg, down in there. You know, and there's a bunch of other ones like Mindy, I think her name is Mindy Begowan. She did like Maryland, the Eastern Shore. But when I've read all three of these people, I don't get the notion that they think it's rubbish. They kind of go in like I've done here. They give you some part of the history of what's happening there. And then they'll go back and say, well, you know, this happened in 18 something that may have caused this issue. And this is who this entity may be. I know Pam has gone in and gotten EVPs. She's gotten pictures. There's a guy back down in Williamsburg, Tim Scullion, I think is his name. He takes pictures and blows them up and they have faces. It's really interesting to look at some of this stuff. But I've never thought that anybody that wrote any of these types of books did it because they thought it was way out there or something. Most of these people, I think, believe or have some belief in the afterlife or what's happening. So
I suppose you probably kind of have to really get the best out of that. But it's fascinating history either way.
Yes.
And the people you talk to. What's the strangest story you've ever had someone tell you? And Brian, we haven't forgotten you. I'm just kind of on this roll.
Okay, go to Brian. A weird story.
I mean, there has to have been somebody you talked to that during your conversation with them, even you kind of went, yeah, okay.
No, I don't look at it that way.
Pick something up then, Susan. Come on.
Oh, I was going to tell you a story. I was going to tell you a cute story. I'm sorry, I ruined that because I'm a skeptic, but you know, I've seen so many things and I've experienced so many things that I don't know. But the cute story I was going to tell you was, it happened at the Dunlower Inn in Mineral. And it was a story she told me about. She was doing a ghost hunt there one night, the owner, Sheena. She was doing a ghost hunt and she had 3 or 4 ladies there with her. And it was one little girl. She was probably about 5-ish. And she disappeared for about 20 minutes. And they found out she'd gone upstairs and she came back down. She came back down with 2 handfuls of pennies. And so Sheena asked her, she goes, well, where'd you find those pennies? And she says, upstairs. And she goes, well, where did you find them at? We don't have any pennies upstairs. The little boy gave them to me. And she was like, there's no little boy upstairs. And so she asked the people in the group, and she goes, did anybody give her the pennies? And they were like, no, we don't know anything about it. And so she went back to the little girl, and she said, take me up there and show me where you got them. So they went on up the stairs, and right when you go up the stairs and turn left, there's this huge chandelier, you know, staying in there. And the little girl stopped there, and she pointed, and she goes, the little boy sits up on the chandelier. And she said, well, how'd he get up there? She goes, he crawled up the wall like a lizard. And she said, is he still there? She goes, yeah, he's up there on the chandelier. And so she told me later, she goes, I don't know where she got the penny. She just had big 2 hands. She thinks that the lizard thing came from maybe when the little guy was smaller, he had a pet lizard or something, and that's how it manifested. He crawled up the wall like a lizard. So I thought that was a very cute story as to how this little girl got 2 handfuls of pennies.
Your version of cute and my version of cute differ significantly. Mine involves like kittens and stuff, and you have like spectral, little boys handing out coins.
Well, they do have now that you're saying kitties. There, one I think Dunlore has some ghost cats. Bell Grove has some ghost cats, and there's another place which is blocking my brain, but there's a third place that I know of that has ghost cats. So you may be able to go enjoy some kitties too.
What I need is cleaning out ghost cat litter boxes. That's just what I need.
Oh, that would be, yeah. But they'd be kind of transparent. I think you would have to worry.
Right. All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Brian, tell us about what you write.
Well, I am kind of multi-genre. I think the main two would probably be, and they're going to seem like they're total polar opposites, but romantic poetry and horror macabre related types of stuff. So yeah, I know, sounds weird, right? And I've only written one novel that's out of print, and it's, you know, close to 50 years old because I'm an old man. But I think primarily I focus on horror anthologies. So Susan had mentioned being in an anthology with some other authors. I was in one this year called Dark Corners of the Old Dominion, and I think most of them are in the Virginia area. And one of the authors in there wrote a ghost story, Susan, about a local area called Ball's Bluff, a battlefield from the Civil War, and it was in there. And another one of the authors, who's in the HWA Virginia chapter that we're in, wrote a ghost story about a haunted house in the vicinity of Bacon's Castle, which is kind of the territory that Pamela Kinney works in on her paranormal research and stuff. But before I talk about my anthology, Susan, I like going to haunted places. I've stayed in the Mitzpah Hotel in Nevada, in the Clown Motel, and a few years ago, we went on a family trip to Ireland and took two nieces, and we went to the Hellfire Club on the mountains outside of Dublin that had been built on an ancient cairn. And it had all kinds of fires and deaths and murders and occult activities and things that happened over the years. Now it's just an abandoned building in the middle of, a park, and you can go hiking and stuff. And while we were up there, my two nieces were walking with us. Eerie silence, no birds, crickets, nothing, just complete silence. And I decide I'm going up the stairs. There's stone stairs going up to the second floor. I've got one niece on the landing behind me because the stairs kind of go up, turn, and then go up, again to work their way up. And the other niece is on the bottom level exploring. There's a massive bang. My one niece stops and is like, that's it. I'm not going any farther. I don't want any piece of that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know what that was. But I walk up and explore the area where the sound came from, and there was nothing. There's nothing in the building, but there was an audible bang that sounded like, I don't know, like a chimney had fallen down or something and crashed into the building. It was crazy. I didn't see anything, but the daughter or the niece that was downstairs had been standing outside and taking pictures. And one of her pictures shows a silhouette of somebody in a blue shape on the right hand. Like if she's facing the building, it would be to her right. And we would have been going up on the left. It wasn't the side that we were on, where she has a silhouette on the right-hand side. And that show's been on a bunch of those Discovery Channel paranormal investigator types of shows, that particular place. So I love going to those places, but that's the closest I've had to an experience. But for me, for individually, I don't know if you can see that. It's Jamie's Closet's the title of it. I just released that one in March. It's a collection and anthology of short stories. I think there's one or two that you might want to call a novella in there. They're kind of longer than your typical short story. The title comes from my sister. Her name is Jamie. And when we were young, I'm going to date myself now, but when we were young and in the 60s, our parents moved us away from, the big city out into the country for a while because my father got transferred. We had nothing to do. We were little, but there was nothing out in the country for us because we'd come from like, an apartment in the projects kind of thing where there's lots of other kids to play with and things to do. So we made entertainment by telling each other stories. Well, she's younger than me, so I was making up most of the stories, and usually they were about things coming out of her closet. So it's kind of an homage to her, and a couple of the stories are based on ones that I've told her. She doesn't want to read this. She wanted a copy of it, but she doesn't want it because when we were young, our mother put us both on medication because of because of these experiences. My sister would have nightmares. She wanted to calm me down, so I kind of got my start doing these short stories and anthologies by trying to terrorize my sister. So what else is it? What else is a good brother for, right? You know, if you can't terrorize your sister, who are you going to terrorize, right?
I like that.
Is your horror then? Is it more psychological horror than, you know?
I would think it's more psychological and weird fiction. I kind of think of it more. Not that I want to compare myself to anybody that's really good, but I think it's more Hitchcock or Twilight Zone than it is, you know, Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers or slasher or those kinds of things. I like to have stories that kind of have a twist or an ending that you're not really sure if it is an ending or not, or if it opens a door for something else. In fact, one of the previous books is called All Things End with a question mark, because like, do they really end? You know, what really happens at the end of it? So it kind of closes and maybe it doesn't close depending on your imagination and point of view. So I kind of personally classify it more as a Twilight Zone-ish weird fiction than in more psychological than I do, I don't know, slasher, splatterpunk, or other types of horror.
Splatterpunk is a category?
It is, and I don't know how to explain it, but yes, it is. Apparently it's growing in popularity, so maybe I should learn to write in it. I don't know.
Steampunk with blood, maybe?
Yeah. I have been experimenting with doing what they call flash fiction, which is like 1,500 words or less for a short story. And typically someone will throw out a topic and say, hey, you know, write about a bicycle. You got 1,500 words, write some horror story, you know. So I've been experimenting with that. And I don't know if Susan got involved or not, but in our local HWA Virginia chapter, we had like a group where a bunch of us submitted some quick flash fiction for other people to critique and edit and help us grow and learn our process of doing that. So that was a lot of fun. And this book, Jamie's Closet, actually has a couple of stories that are kind of flash fiction-ish in there. They're really short stories, like 1,500 words or so, versus, you know, 4,000 or 7,000 or whatever.
So go ahead, Mike.
So I was going to ask you, what is it? Do you find writing short stories easier or harder than longer stories? It sounds like you write novellas or shorter usually. I'm just kind of curious.
So easier or harder? I don't know. I think in some ways I find it easier, but I don't think it's the difficulty of it. I don't think so much is in the writing as in my mentality. I'm an ADHD kind of reader, so I'll have 15, 16 books going at a time. And I'll read a chapter here, and then I'll go read a chapter there, and then I'll, you know, I'm bouncing around. So I kind of do the same thing with writing. I'll be writing along on some story, and then I'm like, oh, what about this other idea? And I've got this whole book of short story ideas. So I'll bounce over and work on it. And at any given time, I guess if I was to go look at my list now, I probably have 60 or 70 short stories, things going at one time. I am working on 2 novels that are going to have the same character. That's a serial killer kind of vibe, except for the main character is the serial killer himself, but the detective kind of thing. So it's kind of more of a mystery serial killer type of thing. And both are going to be novels. They take me longer to write, not because it's so much harder, but because of my own squirrel. I mean, you know, I'm off in the next direction, you know, so it takes me a lot longer to get it done, as if anything.
And Susan, how about you? Do you like longer, shorter form? Do you see a difference in them?
Yeah, I tell you, I like 3,000 words usually as a good short story. For me, I know on my the third one in that trilogy I was talking about earlier, they had made it like, it was just 7,500 to 8,000 words. And I had the story in my head, but I was like, I don't know if I can stretch it out that far. But I got it to like 75 something. So I got it in but it was a story I really didn't like at all. Yeah. And I was like, I just do not like this, but I sent it on because it you know, you have the due date, you got to have it done by. And so I sent it in and they said, oh, we love this. I'm like, ooh. So I was like, okay, y'all like it. And it was nominated for a Stoker Award for the Horror Writers Association. So
Awesome.
I thought it was kind of neat. The only story I ever wrote that I really hated got nominated for an award. So I was like, hey.
So maybe that's what you have to do, is just write what you hate.
There you go. It was just, I mean, to
This
me,
is awful. Yay.
awful. Well, it's just awful. And I mean, everybody that read it said, "Oh, this is just awesome." I'm like, okay. But you know, you're always your own worst critic. So
Have you ever read Twilight?
no,
Talk about awful.
no, I got like the first page, and I was like, I can't go any further. And I'll tell you this, and you guys should probably get embarrassed, but 50 Shades of Grey. I read like the first couple of pages. And I'm like, didn't really. And I know I'm going to get mean things for that, but I just did not care for it. It was just, you know.
I'll take that paycheck though.
Yeah, that's right. Get direct to my blood and guts and killing people. That's, you know.
My brother told me, he called me the one time. It's like, hey, I got this book everyone's talking about. I can't wait to read it. It's 50 Shades of Grey. And I was like, tell me what you think of that. He did not know what it was about.
Oh my goodness.
Ooh.
So for both of you, do you write as your primary job now, or are you still pulling down a 9-to-5?
So in my case, I am not currently pulling down a 9-to-5. I've been unemployed for 10 months. So other than doing some odd jobs here and there and looking for a 9-to-5, this is my primary lifestyle now. I'll say semi-retired, but not necessarily by choice. So, you know, we kind of trying to navigate where I'm at and where I'm going. But, you know, right now, this is it.
I've been writing since about 2006. And from about 2006 to 2019, I guess, I was operating room nurse and an nurse educator. And that's what I did for my full-time job. 2019, I had to have a 5-level fusion in my neck. And I can't do the nursing anymore. So this has kind of become my semi-part-time, you know, thing, because it gets tiresome looking at 4 walls all the time. So I just sit around and try to dream up neat scenarios to put in the book.
I can't imagine being married to a horror writer or you know, a slasher movie writer or something, because you got to wonder where their head's at.
Well, you know, my husband is a computer programmer, and whenever we go to his Christmas parties, when they first meet me, they'll say, "What do you do?" And I'll say, "Well, I'm an OR nurse." You know, and they're like, "We don't hear nothing about your job, nothing." We're getting ready to sit down to dinner. I'm like, "But let me tell you about." No. But I think being, you know, and he's gotten used to it. You know, I'll just talk about whatever during dinner. It's like, okay, whatever. But I think what you're thinking is the same thing I would probably think if I didn't know any better, that horror writers would be really whacked in the head, because I mean, I think it would be fun just to go in and look at their search history on their computer. Just to see what
I was going to say, I'm sure you're on the FBI's watch list.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. The browser history is crazy, I'm sure.
How to kill people with no trace.
Untraceable poisons, yeah.
So if you're both doing this kind of full time, how are you out there, like, promoting, marketing, selling your books? Are you going to shows? You doing it online? How's that working for you?
Do you want to go first, Susan?
Sure. I just, like I said, that book came out in August, and I started probably in March or April. I started calling places, libraries, bookstores, you know, different places. I got invited over to one place to have a meet and greet tea. So like, you start early and you get your stuff going. I've done shows, I've done conventions, I've done book festivals. I mean, just anything that'll get your name out there. And like, whenever that, you know, I have a new book come out, I always contact our county paper and try to get something written up in there, and you know, really promote it on social media a lot. I'm not the best at marketing. I'm not really good at it, but I have read enough to where I know what to do. But if I could get in on a good class or something, I would love it, because I have no marketing skills whatsoever.
Do you ever do shows outside of Virginia?
No.
No, okay. That's what I was going to wonder, if there was a difference between how much people outside the state, whether or not there's still that kind of desire for that content when it's so localized.
Yeah, well, actually, I was really surprised in the last couple of months. A lady contacted me in Indiana. Now that you've said that, I'm sorry, I forgot all about it. She contacted me. She lives in Indiana, and she does a podcast called Twilight Zone Paranormal. And it's, we just had like this kind of an hour interview, and she was telling me how she got the book and she loved it. And she just wanted me to have her on the show. And I'm like, well, do you think your listeners would really want to hear about it because they were in Virginia? And she goes, oh yeah, we love to travel. So that is the only thing I've done outside the state because I was asked to. I really haven't done much outside of the state because I just assumed that it'd be in Virginia. People would want it, more so than people from North Carolina or anywhere else. But I do know that for myself, when I go to a different place or location, like for instance, I spent a lot of time in New York for a couple of years because my son lived up there. And the first thing I would do is go to the Barnes & Noble and find me a haunted book because I want to go visit some haunted places in New York. When I was in Paris, I got a book over there, got one from Dublin, So I think it has a market outside the state, but it has to be the person that's looking for it as opposed to somebody that actually is coming in to look, for it because it's Virginia. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How about you, Brian?
For me, I'm not like Susan. I'm not really, as well versed or as well practiced in marketing for books as maybe I should be. I've done a lot of shows this year, and I like that. And I'm kind of getting a feel for what shows work and what shows don't work, and what types of shows work and what types of shows don't. Because there's horror specific shows, and then there's authors only shows, and then there's shows that you could have a booth sitting next to somebody who's selling candles or, crocheted blankets or whatever, right? So the fit's different. Like one of the shows that I was really successful with this year was in Fredericksburg, which was a witches and pagans show. So next to me was a guy selling necklaces, and across from me was a guy selling handmade broomsticks for the witches. So, but it was the right crowd. So I'm kind of trying to get the feel for that kind of thing. I did go out of state last year. I was in Horror on Main in Maryland, and I'll be with Brian Nowak, who you guys should interview at some time. He and I are both going to do the show again this year coming up, and it's actually going to be in Harrisburg, PA. So that'll move me up a little bit. He and I have gone on in a couple of shows together, and we're going to do Scares That Cares AuthorCon in Williamsburg next year together. So I'm kind of trying to learn from him, from Susan, from other people that I watch. She's mentioned Pam Kinney, who's pretty good at marketing, promotion and stuff. So I'm trying to watch and learn from other people that are farther along in this journey than I am, as well as, watching other authors, training videos on YouTube and Instagram and things like that. So it's kind of a learning process because I was never in it to try to make a living ever. I mean, I always told stories and wrote because it has to come out of here somewhere, right? The madness has to leave me and go to somebody else, right? That's a release the hounds, so to speak. But I might as well work on trying to make some money at it since this is my full-time job for right now at any rate. So, and I'm having fun. I mean, I wouldn't be on the show if I hadn't gone to the Hanover Book Festival and met Mike. And that was the first chance that I had to meet Susan in person, even though we'd interacted a little bit, in a Facebook writing group. So I'm enjoying learning from other people as I go. It's a work in progress. I'll get there, but I'm not there yet.
So I just want to tell you all a fun story. After Hanover Book Festival, where I met you two, and then I went ahead and I said, okay, let's have you two on together. So I went to try to pull your socials, and I went to your Facebook page, and I was like, look at that. Brian put the Hanover Book Festival thing that they gave us on his channel and, told his fans about it. Oh, wait, so did Susan. Who's the one person who never did this because he never thought of it? So when you say you're not good at marketing, I don't believe you because you're much better than me. So I'm actually, Monday, I'm having two, I call them girls. I mean, they're in their 20s, but they're they're girls. They're still children. They're going to help me with social media again.
Well, they know it better than we do.
Yeah. So I buy them lunch and then they tell me how bad I am. And I think because I annoy them, they keep telling me I have to be on TikTok. And I'm like, no, I am never going to be on TikTok. Stop suggesting it.
I'll give it a year.
I get that suggestion from my wife. She really thinks that I would do well with videos on TikTok, but I don't like being on videos. I'm kind of an introvert, and even being here with you guys is a little bit anxiety driving for me personally. So, I keep telling her no, but I keep trying to step out of comfort zones and explore new things. So who knows? She may talk me into it one day, but for now I'm with you. No TikTok.
Well, you know there's book talk now too. So for books coming out. So I've been meaning to check into that, but I haven't yet. So sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's all right. You had something better to say than I did. Quite all right.
So go ahead.
Mike, please.
Okay. I preach to everyone. Ro can attest to this. Last year around September, I started watching some booktubers. And then because, we're all introverts, we wouldn't be writers if we weren't. So I finally, got up the courage to comment, and they liked my comment, and it slowly built up to, oh my God, I can have a friend online. And I finally reached out to them, and I've sent them my books. And since then, I've got, probably 15 of them now have read my book, and they've reviewed it on their channel. So I highly, highly recommend you reach out to them. If you're like me, you'll just watch their channel for like a month or two and then be like, okay, baby steps, I'll put a like, but it has made all the difference this year. My visibility has gone way up because I'm talking to booktubers and they're like, hey, I really like this book. And, that gets more people. So I highly recommend it. And if you want, I can send you a list of booktubers, a very partial list. Most of them are fantasy booktubers, but they all like to read. I mean, they read everything. They read horror, psychological thrillers. I don't know if they'll read romantic poetry. Maybe.
Hey, that's okay. I'll push this stuff.
But after this is over, I'll be happy to send that if you want it.
Yeah.
Get me in.
Love that. Yeah.
And
So,
we got a comment.
oh my God. Hey, Drew, how are you?
It's very exciting. You don't know how rare it is that we get comments.
Wow.
Do we love comments?
Especially with someone who says, catch another one of these. That means that, they've been here before.
Yeah. So
And
is
they
Drew
came back.
related to you or me, bro?
What's that?
Is Drew related to me or you?
Must be you, man.
Or is it one of our guests?
I don't know.
Drew, we're glad to have you.
Glad the check cleared. So, for anybody, I guess we would hardly be doing service talking to authors if we didn't ask you a little bit about the craft portion of it and what your process is like for putting together your for a fantasy author, right? You just got to kind of sit back for a while and just make stuff up, all right? You, Susan, particularly, have to actually do a little research and go out and talk to people or go visit. I mean, there's a little bit more actual effort in what you're doing and
You have
what
to talk to
you're
real
putting together because people are going to read it and they're going to go check it out, right? They're going to go see what this is all about. So what's that process like for you in saying, okay, I'm going to put together this book or story or whatever it is? And how, I mean, we have a structure that we can go from, introducing the character through the whole 3-act arc or whatever it is. How are you attacking that?
I am what is known as a pantser. I don't really plan. Especially in my fiction books, I want to be surprised at the end too. So I figure if I'm surprised, the reader's going to be surprised. But as far as my nonfiction books, for instance, when I started the hotel book, I started researching places in Virginia that were haunted. And I came up with a list of maybe 50, 60 places. And then I would research each place to see what's the story, what's happening, is it worth my time, or is it just something they think is happening? And after a while, I start to put it in a map. So, and I like to make my books my travel, like a travel book, so you can follow it and just go you can go here and go to 3 or 4 different places, or you can drum up here, wherever. But there's a definite path to take. And I get them all settled, and then I sit and I'll write up the pieces first. I like to write first, so when I go visit, I know what to look for, because I've discovered with my first book that sometimes I would go to the places, get the pictures before I even wrote the piece up, and then I get back and write it up and go, oh, I missed that. I should have taken a picture of that. So I learned with the hotel book, write first and make a note of all the little idiosyncrasies, and then I have them when I go visit the location. Once I do that and get pictures and get the research done and interview people, I take, a stack about this big and shove it into, a little book that big. And then, of course, you also have to ask all the places. I had about 70 places, I guess. And it does look nice. I had about 70 places, and I had to write to every last one of them and ask for permission to, be in the book. And then I had several that didn't want to, and that's okay too. And I took them out, and that kind of took it down to, I think it's about 50 in there. But that's kind of my process, just the research, the visiting, the getting pictures, the interviews. Like I said, both books took me about 2 years to get done because of that, but it is a lot of work, and to sit and try to think, okay, how am I going to put this one together? So I try to come up with a table of contents, at least for my nonfiction. So at least I have a direction I want to go in. Like, do I want to start, for instance, the hotel book was Virginia Beach to Bristol. So I kind of did Virginia Beach, Tidewater, Richmond, Charlottesville, just picking major places along the 64 corridor, and just kind of going in between there where it was. I've had some people in Danville, in fact, write to me and ask why I didn't do anything in Danville or Martinsville, down in there. And it's like, I never found anything down in there. It was just weird. But as I discovered, as I was putting it together, it actually follows the Civil War as it goes across Virginia. So I thought that was kind of an interesting little tidbit fact that you could have. But it like I said, it's a lot of work, and just trying to sit down and plan it takes me at least 2 or 3 weeks to figure out how I want to attack it.
Does your husband ever just kind of say to you, look, I want to go to an unhaunted Hilton with a bar and a pool?
No, he's gotten so used to me now, because whenever we travel, he'll, like for instance, we took a cruise last year and we went down the Caribbean, went to San Juan, and we'd never been there. So it was a new place for us. And he had researched a little bit. And he goes, they got a cemetery over there by the big fort on the end. And I was like, no, let's go. So we had made plans, and he's used to that now. He's like, okay, let's go to the cemetery. When we were in Paris, we went to their huge, it's like 110-acre cemetery. It's just huge. And it's where, what's that guy's name? Jim Morrison. He's buried in that cemetery. But the cemetery is just, oh my God, it was just so beautiful. And I was just so happy that he said, hey, you want to go? I'm like, yeah, let's go. So no, he's not like that. He's used to my idiosyncrasies now.
Susan, did you go to the catacombs when you were in Paris?
No, we didn't get there, but it's an excuse to go back, because Rome has some underground too that I really want to see. So one day, and I'll take pictures and post them for you.
Awesome. So, Brian, how about you? How do you do your craft?
Well, since it's mostly short stories, it's not a whole lot of planning, chapter wise or anything along those lines. I keep a notebook of ideas. So John Acuff is this goals guy. You may or may not have heard of him, but he says when it comes to writer's block, he never really has writer's block. What he has is a lack of ideas. And I think from a short story perspective, that's really kind of a true statement. I don't know about people writing novels, but from a short story perspective, it's kind of true, especially when you kind of have an ADHD chase the squirrel kind of writing mentality. So if I can open a book, if I'm bored with whatever I'm working on, I can open a book. I'm like, oh yeah, this idea was fun, and I can start writing on that. So by writing down the ideas, I kind of review them once in a while, and things kind of percolate in the back of my mind until a story kind of falls into place. So I start writing them, and then I have a spreadsheet, like, okay, book 4 is going to contain, 200,000 words. Book 5 is going to contain whatever. And, I'll put tentative names up and I'll start counting the hours and the word count from each story and, moving them around, in the spreadsheet to say, no, this would fit better with that story. So I'm trying to tie them all together. One thing that I've started doing is each one of my books has what I call a Dogu story. A Dogu, and I may not be pronouncing it right, but was a Native American tribe in Virginia. Most of Route 1 and Route 7 going across Northern Virginia and other areas in the Commonwealth were trade routes founded by this particular tribe. And I have this mythos of them. So I have like one story in each book, at least, that's kind of like a Dogu legend of some sort. So I can keep kind of tying back to Virginia roots in those stories,
Awesome.
as opposed to putting them in different places. But Ro, you were asking about how her husband deals with these things, right? My wife is used to it. On our 5th anniversary, we were going up to Atlantic City, and we actually spent time out in the Pine Barrens in the swamps looking for the Stroud House, for the Leeds Point, for the Jersey Devil. So she knows what she got married into. We married on a Friday the 13th. She sent me on a trip to Romania, but I didn't go with her. I went with my oldest son, but she sent me on a trip to Romania so I could check out all of the real Dracula sites across Transylvania. So she's used to me. She knows if we go out somewhere, she'll even look on a map and say, hey, there's this graveyard we haven't explored yet. And that's her asking a question there. Why do I decide to write about horror and not explain? Because it's in my brain. That's my wife asking the question.
Oh, okay. You're not supposed to say that.
Yeah.
You're supposed to tell people it's your wife, man.
Well, whatever. She deserves the pain if she's going to go ahead and make a comment. I can't say why. I think, I actually grew up when I was first going to, buy books from, 5 and dimes. I was getting mafioso books. I mean, I devoured books about La Cosa Nostra. I don't know when I switched over to horror. I mean, I think the first non-mafioso book that I got of my own was somebody gave me The Hobbit to read, and I was maybe 8, and I'm wandering around in the woods thinking I'm in Fanghorn and I'm going to run across Treebeard and, maybe I'll see some hobbits or something. But it probably started with telling my sister scary stories, trying to scare her, because I was at a younger age. But I don't think I started reading them until later in life, and didn't start writing them probably until I was in my 20s. So I don't know, somewhere in there. Now, Drew had put up a comment before. I don't know if there's a way on here for me to make comments or not, but Drew had said something about this. This is Fred the Head. That's what we call him. This particular skeleton. He's a dental phantom, and he was actually an anniversary gift for my wife. So you ask, if the spouses get used to us. Obviously,
she gets you.
She's used to the mentality. But I named him Fred after she got him for me. But he's not my first one. On this side, there's another one, and he's a medical skull. Yeah, I never had a name for him until I named this guy Fred, and I thought, well, this guy might as well be Barney then. So,
Solid.
Fred and
Solid.
That's a Gen X joke for all you kids out there.
Yes, exactly. So Hanna-Barbera, there you go. I got Fred and Barney hanging out with me.
Susan, let's have you answer the same question. How did you get writing what is a particular niche kind of thing?
I always have a theory. I have a theory about any of that, and that's the fact that I don't think you actually pick your genre. I think your genre picks you, and that's what hit me. And I mean, being in the OR with blood and guts and all that good stuff, it was just perfect fodder for writing a horror type stuff, which I started out with. In fact, my first short story that was published was based in the OR. And like the second one was based, my son was at CNU in college going through rush week. And I started thinking, well, what if something might go wrong? And, that turned into that. So it, for me, it was just a logical progression. I didn't really pick it. Like I said, it picked me. I was like, oh, this is what's coming out of my head. So,
Do you ever, working in hospitals, I work in a fairly old hospital structure. Do you ever hear stories people who have worked at those places for a long time about, things roaming the halls?
I mean, I didn't hear the middle part of your question because you kind of went out a little bit.
Yeah, I do that. Did you ever hear any stories from people in the hospitals who have seen things?
Oh yeah, plenty. We had, in fact, I'll tell you this one that just popped in my head. It was a floor ward, like a normal floor, and they had a room with a light that would keep flipping on, and the light would flip on, and then the alarm would go off, and they kept going down there checking. Nobody was in the room. They turn it off. 10 minutes later, light flip, alarm goes off, and it was a new nurse, I think they told me, that was working there. She had no idea what was going on. She just kept going there and seeing there's nobody here. And come to find out that a lady had been in that room for about 3 weeks, had passed about a week before she started. And she had a habit of calling the nurse and getting them to turn the light on. And when they wouldn't show up, she'd hit the alarm. So I think she was still there trying to tell them, hey, come help me. I'm still here. I have heard people have seen apparitions and different things, but for the most part, it's either the alarms or the lights get messed with, and sometimes you can see stuff. It moves from place to place. I know one nurse had told me she placed her keys down somewhere and found them later in another patient's room. Don't even know how they got there. So I think hospitals are famous for that because, a lot of people pass in hospitals. So, but then, they can be any graveyard, Walmart,
So I have a question for actually anybody, Ro, you too. When you go to shows or whatever, have you ever had just a very funny encounter that you can think of? And I'll just tell you, the show that Ro and I did, the Black Friday at the mall, I had a person come up, looked at the books on my table and goes, have you even read these books? And I looked down and said, yeah, about 37 times since I wrote them. Right. They looked at my shirt, and he looked at the books, and he's like, you wrote these? I'm like, who on earth is going to stand here for hours looking desperate other than the author?
I'm sorry, who's talking? I don't want to. Okay. I get that a lot too at signings. People will walk by the table and like, are you the author? And I'm like, yeah. Why would I be? But I mean, maybe they think we got the books from somewhere else and they're just selling them wholesale or something. I mean, that's what crossed my mind. But I like that's kind of a weird question until I finally figured that out. So, but that's my funny story. Like, are you the author? Yeah.
Yeah, I get quite a bit of that because of the name. People are, think like they're looking around for a brand or something. And it's, I think the weirdest thing I saw at a show though is I met this guy once and we started doing this podcast, this video thing, and that was pretty strange. So,
what was strange?
It was Mike.
Oh, poor Mike.
So we all had to take a road trip to northern Michigan with Susan.
It looks like.
And there's more.
Glowing orbs, Dustin. Oh wow, nice.
Is Drew from New England somewhere?
He said Michigan. I don't know.
I haven't seen Wicked written down in a long time. Wicked long time.
Wicked cool, yeah.
Ooh.
All right.
Good advice.
So does anybody, Brian, you said you have a show and Drew is from Michigan.
All right.
You said you have a show next week?
Saturday.
Yeah,
the Community Lutheran Church up here in Sterling, Virginia is having like a Christmas festival, and I'm sharing a booth with another horror writer. He also writes mystery and sci-fi, Brian Nowak, who you should probably have on your show at some time. I'm sure Susan knows who he is.
He's a good fellow.
He's a good guy. He's a friend of mine. We're in a couple of groups together, writing and otherwise. We're both in the same American Legion post and stuff. So we do a bunch of shows together. It cuts down on cost to have a good time. And I'm learning from him too, because he's farther along. He's younger than me, but he's farther along in this journey than I am. So, I'm learning from people who know things.
And Susan, how about you? Do you have more shows, or are you going to go to haunted places for Christmas?
No, actually, I kind of got December off. I just got off of a 3-month book tour thing, and I'm taking December off. I start back in January. The first thing I have is a talk I'm giving at a library in Charlottesville, and about haunted hotels. So I'll be back on the publicity tour in January.
Awesome. And Brian, it's only fair that you take this question first.
I shouldn't have told her we had a show tonight. So I'm going to give that a 2-part answer. From a horror perspective, my favorite writer hasn't written a whole lot of stuff. He's T.E.D. Klein. My favorite horror book of all time is called The Ceremonies. I want to say it probably came out in 82, maybe. It started from a short story he was writing in like a weird fiction magazine, Weird Tales magazine or something, years ago, that he turned into a novel. And he's got a handful of short stories and a collection of novellas that I really love. But his Ceremonies is the only book that ever gave me the chills. And I read horror all the time. That's the only one that really, it got me. So I've got it on Audible now because they just recently released it. And I reread it, every few years. But I've kind of had a fascination lately in the last, 5 or 6 years with the combination writers of Preston and Child. They have a series of books about, an eccentric FBI detective named Pendergast. So, they kind of mix in a lot of mythology, history, science, and things together into one story and supernatural and stuff. But it's not really horror, but, it's not really mystery. It's kind of, I'm not even sure how to describe it, but they're always on the #1 bestseller list in New York Times. And I just randomly picked up a book of theirs in an airport one time, and it was like book 5 in a series. So had to go back and read the first 4. And now every time they come out with a new one on this particular character, I buy it.
That's the dream right there, isn't it, Mike?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
If somebody picks up number 5 and say, "Oh, I'm going to need the first 4 too."
Right.
Yeah. Oh. So, Susan, how about you? What's your favorite?
Well, outside of horror, of course, I love David Baldacci. I like Kathy Rakes. Who else do I read? Michael Connolly. I like a lot of medical type thrillers, so Michael Palmer, Robin Cook. And then for horror, Stephen King, of course. I'm a big fan of Bentley Little. I don't know if you've ever read him. He's a little off, but I like him. And then the other guy is Richard Lehman, which I've read a couple of his things, and they kind of look like, ooh. So that's about good. Brad Parks is good too. He writes thrillers. Can't think of anybody else right now. The big guys, anyway, that I actually read. So.
And Susan, I want to ask, have you ever come to Richmond to look at the ghost stories there, or?
I've been to the Poe House a lot. In fact, I'm a member of the Poe House. I have been to the Jefferson. I've been to oh God, there's so many places in Richmond. In fact, I'm working on a Richmond book right now, oddities type things in Richmond. And my favorite place, of course, is Hollywood Cemetery. There's so much down there just to see, do, and experience. So, I've been to a lot of places down in Richmond. And I'm not really doing the haunted places of Richmond because Pam already covered that. She's got haunted in Heart Orchard too. This is kind of a twist on some of that. It may have a couple of haunted spots in it, but it's mostly different things I've seen down there that are just off the wall weird. So
Fair.
So,
And
Brian, is your wife around right now?
She's in another room somewhere. Yeah.
You need to just say, "Come on down here," and just ask your questions in person. It's fine. We don't mind. She can ask as many questions as she wants. It's all good. So you got to answer it now.
oh yeah.
I don't know if I can answer that properly or not. I mean, I write because I'm a writer. I mean, it's just, why do you breathe oxygen on purpose? Do you sit there and think about it all the time? I don't think so. It's just stuff that's in you that needs to come out, and it's second nature, I guess. I don't even know how else to describe it. I mean, there's times when I don't want to write and I don't have any motivation to write, and there's other times where I can't stop myself from writing, and it's like if it's there, it has to come out. And I guess in some ways it's therapeutic. I mean, actually, the Horror Writers Association, the main group that, over the whole country, not the Virginia chapter, but they did a thing last year called Horror and Hope, and it was for Mental Health Awareness Week or Mental Health Awareness Month in May. And I submitted a poem that's in that book. And it basically is, that poem is talking about how you get rid of my own madness is by getting it out of my head and giving it to you. I put it on paper and give it to you. So that's my therapy.
Let's share the wealth. How about you, Susan?
Almost the same thing. Like he said, it's in there and it's just got to come out. I've also got a poem in that same magazine he's talking about. But for me, it's kind of cathartic. Some of my stories were based on, especially my short stories were based on things I was going through at the time, and I just had to get it out of my system. So I agree with Brian on that. But why did you start writing? I started writing because I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia back in 2003, and writing was a way to get rid of all those feelings I was having, the depression and all that goes along with it. And then I started into fan fiction, where like different TV shows that I watched, and they'd end. You've seen an episode, it ended, and you didn't really care how it ended, so you kind of rewrote it. And so then that just kind of led me, and then I found the Virginia Writers Club, which I joined, and just kind of went from there and got a lot of good advice from people, how to write, how to re-edit what you've written, and different things. So I can't say enough about joining a writers club, whether it's Virginia Writers Club or Horror Writers, as we're both in. And I mean, I just started writing kind of like Brian did, just to get stuff out of me, because I think of it as poison and it needs to come out. And once I get it out, I feel a lot better. So it's very cathartic for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it probably helps you kind of think about things in different ways. If you're trying to write it and put it in kind of a story context, it makes you probably maybe think about it at a little deeper level than you would normally.
Kind of out of the box solutions, yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
So for both of you, do your spouses read what you write, or do they just support you from afar?
My spouse reads what I write. She gives me feedback. Sometimes it's excellent feedback. Sometimes I don't want to hear what she has to say because my brain is going in a different direction. I mean, I'm just being fair. She gives honest feedback, and I appreciate that honest feedback, and a lot of times it's funny because she'll read a story and I like to have twists. I actually bring small packs of Twizzlers to shows with me to give to people, because stories should have twists. So here, have some Twizzlers candy. But frequently when she'll read a story, she knows me so well, she already kind of knows what the end's going to be and what the twist is going to be, because we've been together for so long. So there's no surprise to her. So I kind of find that a little bit amusing. But she supports from afar, and she is kind of like my first, bouncing the ideas off of her person,
Awesome. Are you sure, though? Because she's had a lot of questions.
I know, really.
Yeah, she's trying to bring me out of my shell because she knows I'm, an introvert at heart, and doing this is a little difficult for me. I think that might be her motivation, to get me used to video so she can try to push me into TikTok.
There you go. Well, you're doing it very well. So
Yeah, and TikTok is much shorter.
Yeah.
You've been at this for like over an hour now.
And Susan, you're not off the hook. What about your spouse?
He helps me a lot. I bounce ideas off of him. He helps me edit. Him and my son both are really good editors for me. And he of course takes me to different places and helps me get to where I need to go and such with my interviews and things. But yeah, he reads some of it. He's not really into the short stories, but he's helped me a lot with the nonfiction, and kind of like Bryn said, Brian, he said he's there, he helps me edit, he gives me constructive criticism. Here's another idea, try it this way or try it this way. And sometimes it turns out to be ways I never even thought of at the time. I was like, oh, that's good. But he even helped me. We had a story we wrote together. Well, actually, he had the idea and I wrote it, but I still put his name on it because he came up with the idea. So it's nice to do that collaboration sometimes, just to say, hey, I can write too. So, but he's very supportive.
Okay. So Susan, are you going to be anywhere? Did I ask you this? You're not going to be anywhere the rest of this month, right? You're taking it off?
Yeah, December off, and then January 6th, I think it is. I'm going to be at the North Rio Library in Charlottesville doing a presentation on my haunted hotel book. But you can check my website at that.
And the website for both of them are going to be in the description below, so feel free to check those out. And there are many, many books by these people, so you have many purchases to make. 17, I think, if I count it right.
Oh, wow.
And going up.
Yeah.
Well, let's just end it with Drew's question here real quick. And I think you guys have covered this a little bit before, but Drew got here late. So that's all right, Drew. We don't mind. If you take a look, you can read that question there, right? At what age did you want to be a writer? And are there any formative books or authors that inspired you to want to be an author or that have influenced your writing? So really quick, and then you can get on to other things.
I'll go first since I've been reading there. I was actually 34. I started writing when it was something I was thinking about. I just kind of started doing it. And like I said, to get those feelings about that fibromyalgia out, and it just kind of led me to where I am now. As far as a good book for writing, Stephen King has a book called On Writing.
That's a good one.
I would recommend to everyone to read if you're interested in it, because he's got a lot of good advice, a lot of good tricks, tips, and all that good stuff. So please check it out if you're interested.
Yeah, there's another book by Anne Lamott called Bird by Bird or something along those lines. It's really good for that. And I've read and have a copy of the Stephen King one as well. But one person that's influenced me in my madness, Drew, is H.P. Lovecraft. So
he'll do it.
You want to reach into some madness, you can go ahead and grab some Cthulhu love from him along the way. And by the way, I have gone to his grave as well. So every Tuesday on my my business Facebook author page, I do a graveyard tourism thing where I show various graveyards and things that I've been to. And I've been to HP's burial place up in Providence.
I don't want to take your wife's side on this, Brian, but there's your shtick for your
TikTok.
Oh my God, TikTok. Yeah, there's your thing for your TikTok.
Hey, see, and I thought we were doing good, Ro. I thought we had some kind of bond building.
Yeah, sorry, man.
Mike, I like you.
That's
you're good to me.
That's the twist, Brian. You didn't see it coming.
That's the opportunity for you, man. If you're already doing that anyway, you may as well just take a little video about it, and that's your angle on it.
Yeah, and I'm not going to hear the end of that now. Thank you.
I can't wait to join on it. You let me know when it happens, and I will follow.
All right.
All right. Hey, Brian, Susan, thank you so much for joining us on our first ever quad circle here of people, and hour 8. That's got to be like the second longest show we've ever done, I think.
Always enjoyed it. Thank you for having us.
Our attention spans is generally not that long.
No, not around dinner time. It's usually not.
Right.
So yeah,
Drew, Tiffany, thank you very much for showing up and commenting. That always makes it fun.
Thank you. It was a good time.
So this comes to the awkward part where I'm going to hit end stream, and it takes an indeterminate amount of time. So we just all wave awkwardly and smile until we're finally off.
Smile away, boys. Smile away.
Bye.